Hey, I'm Bull Holland. Welcome to How to Pitch. Today you're in for a treat. My teammate Anthony Santos is going to be presenting today. So a little background on Anthony and where we are. So let's go to the next slide, please. It's a six-part webinar series. We've already covered the first two parts, talking about what is the problem, and that's the key thing to define. We've got about 6 seconds to get somebody's attention. We want to get their attention with the problem, not your answer. We talked about the unique aspects of doing research within the Department of Defense, because once you convince someone there's a problem, the next thing you need to explain is why no one else is solving it. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to take a slight detour from that path, and we're going to talk about how to actually design your presentation. And that's what Anthony is here for. So Anthony actually has a degree in education. He's also got 4+ years in instructional design, which for those of you who don't work in the educational field is sort of the highest end of starting with a blank piece of paper and putting together all the course objectives and terminal objectives and enabling objectives and assignments and all the things that map to Bloom's taxonomy about the ways that we want people to learn. And then beyond that, Anthony has almost a decade of commercial experience in terms of marketing and communication. And so he is an excellent person to come in and teach people about how to literally put together your presentation. And so you've already seen examples of his work. He did all these slides, right? So let me go ahead and hand it over to my friend and teammate, Anthony, and let him teach you some skills that you can replicate on how to put together a good presentation.
All right. Thanks, Bull. So like you said, I'm Anthony Santos. And so when Bull came to me to kind of run this webinar, knowing I only have 15 minutes to do this, and then I really want to give you time for individualized questions or any kind of like personal design, challenges that you might have, I really just had to take the mindset of like, okay, I'm going complete beginner here. So I'm assuming that no one has really built decks before or, has really had any kind of like real presentation design experience. So that's the kind of mindset I went with. And so I'm just going to break it up into like how to get started. I'm going to share some resources that I would recommend for someone that's just starting out. And then just some like design pitfalls that I see all, way too common as I'm working with different people here. So how to get started. So the first thing that I always ask people is like, well, what platform are you working with? And so the first thing you need to figure out is like what platform you want to start on, because changing platforms, and when I say platforms, I'm talking about your presentation tool that you're using. I have the top 3 here in no particular order. I'm using Google Slides here just because BM&T tends to really we use the Google Sheets here, so that's what I tend to use a lot of times. But I mean, I've used PowerPoint and Keynote plenty of times, and they're all pretty similar, but picking one and sticking with it is key, because it does get tricky, especially with design, when you're moving back and forth between different platforms. If anyone has ever tried to like convert different things, you'll notice they don't share a lot of the same fonts. The alignments can really get, like the spacing of everything can really shift and change when you're moving back and forth. So either whatever you're comfortable with, I would suggest, or if there's a necessary platform that they're requiring you to use for certain presentations, like for the how to pitch, maybe like competition or something like that, that you need to use a certain platform, make sure you know that ahead of time and stick with it. The next thing that I would suggest then is really outlining slide by slide, your entire presentation. So hopefully you already have the content, like through what Bull's going through. You understand exactly what you want to include in your deck and how you're outlining it in a written page Word doc. But when I would really strongly advise you to take that and then just go slide by slide and just organize it how you would do it or how you're planning on presenting it. By doing it this way, and I'm talking about like not adding any stylization, just like I have it on this little example, just, not worrying about font, colors, images, anything. Because when you do it this way, even though you have it on a Word doc, you're like, okay, I kind of understand the flow I want. When you actually sit down and put it side by side, you'll start noticing a lot of different, maybe like like issues with these slides are really full. Like I've really put too much on a slide, or maybe I'm like, oh, I might need a graph for this one, or maybe I can showcase this slide with maybe like a infographic or something different than just explaining it with bullet points. So when you see it outlined like this, it really allows you to prepare to figure out what kind of design work you need to do, or what designs you're actually looking for. Maybe it's just images that you're looking for that can be actually aligned. So it really takes a lot of guesswork out as you're going through designing your actual deck, if you actually take the time, in the beginning to actually just outline it slide by slide. All right. After you've done that, now you can really get into the fun part and the actual creative part, and it's actually picking a theme. So your theme includes everything. When I say theme, I'm talking about like the fonts, color palette, images, any kind of stylization that you're adding into your deck. It really constitutes your theme. So by picking a theme, you're really setting up those guardrails for yourself and for the presentation in a positive way, because then you're sticking to like one font, you're sticking to like a certain color palette, and that way it actually eliminates a lot of other distractions, or like kind of streamlines your design efforts going forward. Because by doing this, you already know, okay, I'm sticking to these 3 colors, or I'm going to utilize these types of images throughout my entire presentation. It really just helps you stay focused, and it also keeps, when you're ready to present, there's nothing jarring or there's nothing jumping out that you didn't mean to when you're presenting. So for example, if you're going through and you're using grays, blues, and white throughout your entire presentation, then you randomly just start using a red or a yellow. That can be positive when you're trying to, show something, or like show something you want to like is impactful maybe for the slide or presentation, but maybe you didn't mean to do that. And then now the audience is confused, like, well, why is he highlighting this? Or why is she like really, having all these different images that, maybe don't even have anything to do with it. So once again, like keeping that theme helps streamline your entire presentation, and helps keep the audience focused as well on what you're doing or trying to showcase. So I have a couple different examples. Now there's different types of themes. There's hundreds of different themes you can, and thousands of different themes you can go with. But they all have different, the point of me showing these 3 is that they all have different vibes. They all have different, emotion tied to them. They have different, meaning behind them. And that's really so when you're picking your theme, you really need to think about, your audience. You got to understand what they're looking for, what you want to portray to them, and also how do you want your topic, or what your subject is that you're presenting, how you want that to be conveyed. If you want to really serious, if you're talking about something very serious, you're not going to really take a creative approach in your theme, because it's usually lighthearted. It's usually more, fun or energetic, when really you probably will take something maybe more minimalist, or maybe corporate, or something like that, to really, hone into your point. So once you kind of have an idea of your theme, you can really, I want to showcase a lot of different resources that are available to you, especially for anyone, but especially for beginners of design. And this is probably going to be the meat of my presentation. Each of these, just so you know, all of these images are actual clickable links. So when we share the deck, you'll be able to like see all these examples and go to them. So I'm actually going to back out. And I have all these tabs already open for you. So I'm going to kind of go through each of these sections one by one. So first off, themes. So these are all examples of like that, or templates that you can find for your theme that you're looking for. So you might say, okay, that's great. I picked a theme. I know what kind of vibe I want, but I don't know. I'm not a creative person. I don't know how to like get to that point. Well, there's plenty of resources that you have available to you, including I have the 3 main platforms again, because a lot of times you could just Google that of like, oh, PowerPoint template, and you can even include your theme, or maybe like dark blue theme, stuff like that. You can really Google to find those specific ones, or just utilize a lot of the templates that are available already in those platforms that you have that you chose. But the main one that I want to talk about here is actually Canva. Now, I'm not affiliated with any of these design resources, but I always bring up Canva to especially newbies of design for anything, not even just presentations. Canva is a design app There's plenty of other ones available actually as well, but this is just the main one I know, and you might have even seen some commercials on it and stuff like that. But it's free to use for all of these, but with some caveats. But there is a pro version that really just gives you more. It doesn't limit a lot. It just gives you more templates, more images, stuff like that. So it's a monthly subscription if you're interested on that. But so Canva, it does documents, infographics, social media posts, but it also gives you templates for presentations as well. So for example, when you're in here, you can click presentations and it'll just pull up all these different presentations that already made for you. My caveat with these is I wouldn't just like pick one and be like, okay, this looks great. I'm just like this real estate one. It shows you all the different slides that are available in it. And just like, oh, okay, this is the vibe I want. I still would obviously change a lot of the things in it. I wouldn't just plop this right into a deck and start putting your content in and call it a day. I would still maybe change the colors. I would still change, feel free to like the font, major things like that to kind of still make it your own. It's completely free to use. You're absolutely able to do that, but you don't want to be in a situation where someone else at like doing the same presentation as you and you're like, oh, that's very similar to what I had. And then I've seen, as an educator, I've seen this a few times. I don't know if Bull has as well, where someone's doing a presentation and it tends to look a lot the same. It's like, oh, they use the same exact Canva template. So try to change it up as much as you can in that regard. But Canva is a great, at least, inspiration for a lot of templates. If you maybe don't know what kind of template or theme you want to use, there's plenty of different templates to give you ideas for themes there. So the next thing I was going to talk about was images. Everyone always asks, well, I'm just going to, grab images offline or just start Googling different things. And the problem with that, obviously, you have copyright issues where depending on where you're presenting this, because you're, in certain scenarios of where you're sharing this, yes, there are some one-time use legalities you can use it for, but obviously you just want to keep it as free use as possible. And I recommend, my first recommendation is Unsplash here and Pexels. They're both pretty much the same. You might be able to find some that you like versus others that you don't like, but really it's just an open source platform where you can just search for whatever you're looking for by keywords. So say you're like, oh man, my slide's kind of blank right now. I just need maybe like I need someone typing. So you just type in typing and there'll be plenty of free use images that you're able to just utilize for your presentation. Some of these are for, once again, all of these have pro versions or paid for versions. So some like the Unsplash Plus, you can't really use that unless you pay for it, but there's so many other ones here that are available and you're completely free to use. You're able to just click on these, sure, I like this one, copy it or download it and put it right in your presentation, no problem. So the only thing here, Adobe Stock, I did include here. It is the best image finder out there because they'll literally do photo shoots for every specific scenario you can think of and video shoots. And they have like a ton of different high quality images all shot from their studios. But the thing is, it's a subscription cost. There's no real free version. And then you can only utilize so many per month. Even they limit how many you can actually download per month. So it is quite pricey unless you're a student. Actually, a lot of times the universities partner with Adobe and they're able to offer them free access to all of them and stock images and stuff like that. So if you're in a university program or something like that, you might be able to check with your school. You usually can Google that within your school's website and you can be able to find that. Next is Coolers. So Coolers is actually pretty cool. Hence the name. It's a color palette generator. So what that means is as soon as you come on the website, you just start the generator. Don't need an account or anything like that. And it'll just give you this palette, just give you a random palette because it's a random generator. Now, what's cool about this is like when you're trying to figure out what kind of theme you want, you don't have to think about the color wheel or like you might have learned in like art school or something, or like back when you're taking art in like elementary school, which is just like all the primary colors and secondary colors. You don't have to worry about trying to figure out what matches or what works. This literally does it for you. All you have to do, and it'll randomly continue generating just by hitting the space bar it'll just continue to give you random generated color palettes. And then when you get to a point where you're like, oh, I like this green, I'm going to lock it and then continue to generate other colors until I find, and it only generates colors that are still within the appropriate palette. So you can continue to lock certain ones that you might like until you find all the colors that you want to use. Easy, right? That's cool. But you're like, I don't have the eye for that. Well, the really neat part about this one is that you can actually, if you go up here, you can create a palette from a photo. So if you know maybe your cover art or like the cover image you're using for your presentation, or like a photo of your MVP, or like whatever you're using in your presentation that you really want to highlight, you can just drop the image here. I'm just gonna, I think I have like a random, give me 1 second. I just have this like random Adobe stock image. And as you can see, hopefully, it generated a palette based off this photo. And you can continue to just change it too if you don't like that palette or a certain aspect. Like, it's just finding different locations to help you pick that palette that you want. And so that's a really cool way of generating a theme off a photo. And I highly recommend like people use this, because then it'll spit out all these the hex code, which now we're getting a little 201 here. So it'll give you the numbers that you can just plug in to any different program you're using to find the numbers. So you either have like a hex code or RGB code. They're all the same. It's just different ways of, I guess, just like categorizing color. But all you have to realize or know is that like it's a 6-digit code that you just put in to find a color, and the program you're using will know what to do with that. Yeah, and then that's all that. The last thing I want to show was Noun Project. So Noun Project is similar to images, but it's only icons. So once again, if I went to typing, just like we did before, it'll give you just icons for your presentation or for what you're looking for, which is awesome to showcase. I like to use icons, maybe like next to certain bullet points, or instead of using a full image, or if you want to include it in maybe like a infographic or something that you wanted to like really give a little more oomph to, and didn't want to use a full colorized image, or maybe you can't find one that really highlights what you're looking for. I always suggest using icons as a simple way, maybe even replacing bullets for your presentation. So this is an awesome resource as well to just kind of find those icons that you're looking for. But yeah, next, I just want to go into quickly, I'm just going to go back to the slideshow, just some of the common pitfalls. Actually, I'm going to back out of that because this will be easier. Common design pitfalls I tend to see, especially for new designers or new just people with PowerPoint tools. Image manipulation is a common error that I see people do. What happens is they tend to stretch the image by grabbing either the top, bottom, left, or right of the image box. By doing this, you're actually distorting the pixels, is what it's doing. And so then you tend to get this stretched out, terrible looking image that just doesn't work in what you're trying to accomplish. So you should always grab any kind of image by the corners, because then it keeps the vertical and horizontal pixels the same. So that way it's just changing the actual range of the picture versus grabbing one part of it. So it's actually keeping it the same. But then a lot of people say, well, if I do it this way and I grab it to make it to the size that I want it, but then I'll have this really giant picture. Well, that's where cropping comes in handy. So cropping is always shown by this little square here. It's pretty much a universal symbol for it. But a lot of times you can just double click it to get into the image itself. And this little it'll like highlight it, and you'll get these darker boxes or points on the box. Now, these are safe to grab anywhere, because what you're doing is essentially cutting the image and keeping all the pixels the same, but you're just cropping, well, using the word, but cutting the image to where it needs to be, or what the size you want, without actually changing the aspect ratio of it. So it's a great way to get the image to where you want it at without stretching it or distorting the image. So I would definitely, get used to cropping images to make them fit to what you need. All right. Next, we have font overlays. So a lot of times people will just drop images over either bright colors or just over images. And as you can see in this example, it's hard to read. Like you can't read this white over this image. So a little trick that I always share with people is to use transparent shapes. So what that means is taking all these programs come with, the shape tool, just make a square like I did. And when you do that, what I like to do is just go into the coloring and just make it, you can control the transparency of the image. So let me show you what that means. So when I go to a color, I can control how see-through this image or the box actually is. And by doing that, you're actually like kind of putting that background. So it's kind of, graying out the image itself, but allowing you to place words on top of the actual, the image. So it's a great way, easy way to get around like, oh, I want to put these words over something, but, doing this is a lot easier than trying to like change the color of the image or trying to find the correct image. Maybe you have the image you want to use, just throw a transparent box over. It's a lot easier to showcase what you're writing on top. The last thing is not utilizing white space. So when I say white space, it's the space around all your content. Now this might be a little 201, but it's something important that I want to stress to new designers is you want to make sure you're utilizing as much of the white space as you can without feeling too cluttered. You want, it's a little bit of, designer choice here. And this is your artistic ability here, but you want to still be spread out to where it's legible and it makes sense, just like on this left side where the words were so condensed, you're not utilizing the white space in between the lines. So that's the minor white space, but then the major white space, if you could see, it's a little hard to see in this example that I found, but you see how they crunched everything up in the center. They put everything in the center of the slide or the image, when really let's space it out, utilize all the space that you have. And not saying add a bunch of different things, but I'm just saying utilize, keep it simple, but like utilize all the different space that you have on the image you're either trying to make or the slide itself. So that's just, it takes a little practice and you might, but I always tell people to stand back, like literally go back from your chair and from your screen and just like your audience, can I see this from far away? Can I read this if because usually when you're presenting, you're going to be presenting on to a larger audience. So you need to be able to stand back and make sure you can read and see everything that you're looking at. So yeah, those were my, here, I'm going to switch out so I can those were all what I had for today.